people have to look after themselves first.
OK, Andy King, what do you say to Mohammed with that sort of attitude?
I'm very sorry to hear that sort of attitude being said at the end of a millennium. I believe that we need to go forward together. No such condition could ever be acceptable in a proper national health service. It must be based on clinical need.
So how can we go forward together with that attitude, Mohammed?
I'm afraid to say that that is just sheer hypocrisy and nonsense. You know, we've tried to assimilate with you. You brought us here to come and do your work in this country. Black people in this country built the NHS. Black people built this country via the slave trade. So we have more than done our part in this country. But time after time after time again, and the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, the report, just highlights that every time we try and assimilate, that we only get kicking in teeth.
But Teddy Coffey, OK, we take your point. Thank you, Mohammed. I'll come to you later on if I can. Teddy Coffey, we have, though, have we not? Let's be optimistic, come a long way in the last 30 years when we come to race relations in this country.
I think a lot of significant achievements have been taken forward. But I wouldn't say that we've won the race by any means. I think where we are now is that we're under starters' orders. Everybody understands, and pardon the pun, that the race is on. And it is precisely in that situation that you really discover what people actually feel about racial issues. Because despite all these incredible achievements that have been taking place in recent months, you are finding that there is actually quite a strong backlash beginning to develop. And people are saying, for example, that others are playing the race card and so on and so forth. So let's say that the matter is on the table.
Is Mohammed playing the race card?
That is only that is a decision for him to make. But I would say that that is actually the most enormous red herring, because people will play the race card by all means. People will become benefit fraudsters. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have a welfare state system.
How do we dispel the ignorance, then, that evidently a lot of white people have about black people and vice versa?
I think in the first instance, you've got to be very honest. People need to come out and be clear about what the history has been.
Of course.
We didn't arrive at the present situation today in a vacuum. These forces have been building up for a very long time. The people who made that stipulation on that donation were knowing what they knew to do, were doing what they knew to do.
They are prisoners of their prejudices, Nelson Mandela said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to unravel all these strands of prejudice, first of all, we need to be honest about what's gone on in the past.
So education, 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 if I can quote your boss, Andy King. We've got a teacher over here, Winsome Thomas. What should we be teaching all our kids then?
We should be teaching all our children that we are all equal in the sight of God, and that we've all got the same physical features almost. We've got a face, mouth, nose. We may look different, but we all feel the same.
And what sort of culture and history should we be teaching our children as well?
I think it should be a diverse history. We should be doing a world history. Britain was the country that went into other countries, created the empire, yet in our history teaching in schools, we don't reflect that. We reflect an English history, and we don't say that it affected other countries, other people. That's why I'm here.
So it's too narrow, it's too little England.
Too narrow.
Alan Ford, you're worried about the preservation of English culture and English history. So what do you say to Winsome Thomas?
I think she's talking nonsense. If we have black children or brown children or Chinese, if we can't imbue them with our own history, how our own institutions were formed and developed, then those kids are going to grow up and be totally confused. Where does their loyalty lie?
Well, hang on, Winston, you answer that.
We live in a world, not in England. This is a world culture.
Right.
England does not rule the waves.
I haven't suggested we do.
The whole world is equal. And it is imperative that our children learn, if they are to impact the world in business, in education, in science, in technology, in design, that all people contributed to this culture. You haven't got an English culture.
Of course we have. Don't
You
talk
have
nonsense.
a multicultural society.
No, we haven't.
You have a diverse society.
We don't, Alan, we don't have a multicultural society.
The ethnic minorities make up 6%
Excuse me.
in this country.
Excuse me. I resent that term, ethnic minority. Call me by my real disposition. I'm an African person. I'm not an ethnic minority. If
Oh, you don't have a British passport then? Is what you're
Sorry?
saying?
Sorry?
Do you have a British passport?
That's immaterial. That's immaterial. That's irrelevant. I
not
am
irrelevant
No,
at
no.
all.
Excuse
You're
me.
either
excuse
British
me.
or you're not.
No, I don't regard myself as British anyway. I wasn't born in this country, so I am not a British citizen. Right? I'm an African, first of all, right, before the country of origin. So let's not confuse race with nationality.
Okay, Mohammed, so when, Alan, you hear this very phrase about fighting racism, do you think
I
we
didn't
have...
think there was a war on. I mean, no one's told me there's been a war.
Oh, please, come on.
Joe Allen, what do you say to Alan here?
He's simplifying the stuff, and I don't know where he comes from. I'm sure it's not England and so on, because he's confused. The point of the matter, as the lady says, we live in a multicultural. England wasn't made up of England alone. Sometimes they forget Scotland and Wales contributed, and the Irish.
The
never mind the
Vikings,
Let's get it right.
And what do they teach their kids? They teach their children from a Scottish, a Welsh, and an Irish perspective.
Settle for a minute. Yeah, listen for a while. Okay. As the lady says, we all of the same world. We all contributed. You know who put the great in Great Britain as it was? People from Africa.
Of course.
Was transposed from there
Of course.
to the Caribbean and the Americas. And in the hard work they did, you get the money from the sugar cane that we worked so hard for.
And the gold, and the diamonds, and the tea,
and all the rest.
So, Alan, should this be part and parcel of the history curriculum that we teach our kids in this country?
We could take a global perspective. There's no problem in that. The problem is, in England, not in Scotland, not in Wales, not in Ireland, they're
But there's
not
black
taught their
people in
history.
Scotland, there's
You've had
black
yours
people
say,
in Wales,
let me have
there's
mine.
black people in Ireland.
Of course there are.
Well then,
And they're taught their history from an Irish perspective.
So what are you talking about? You're talking about some so-called Anglo-Saxon majority or something. What are you saying?
No, I'm saying that our children, primarily in primary school, should be taught their own culture and their own history.
But you see,
Regardless of whether they're black or white.
Tete Koff, it's a fascinating point. Tete.
Actually, I mean, the standard for the United Kingdom should actually be higher than the standard for other people, because the United Kingdom has been dealing with other countries and other continents for far longer than anybody else. What that means is that people from the United Kingdom should know far more about foreign cultures and should reflect this in all the institutions that they have. Fortunately, after the Stephen Lawrence business and so on, institutions like the police force are coming forward. They're understanding that they need to recruit a force that reflects the society that it serves. But what worries me about what you're saying is this return to this kind of very inward look at a monocultural United Kingdom.
That's right.
And that is now a matter of history.
So is this too limiting? You're just putting yourself in a little bit of a box here. Alan, is it just too limiting? Maybe you should be a bit more outward-looking. Maybe we should all be a bit more outward-looking. And maybe, Mohammed, you should be a bit more outward-looking as well. Alan, what do you say?
I have no objections with that. They should be taught what the empire, or how the empire was built. They should be taught about slavery. But they've also got to be taught how our own institutions began, how the English language developed. And the problem is, if we don't do that, then we're going to have black or brown kids are going to go through the system and won't have an identity.
You see, I already know about
Tati, allow me, Mohammed, allow me to... Lady over here wants to make a point. Let me come over here, very quickly.
I think they're going off the subject, and this gentleman's racist to himself, because if I died
Define
tomorrow...
racism.
Excuse me,
Define
you've
racism.
had plenty to say.
No, you've accused me of being
No,
racist. I
I'm
resent.
racist to
Mohammed, let her
yourself.
explain herself, then I'll come
sorry.
back to you and
You're
let
being
you respond.
racist
Why am I being racist?
Because you want to give your donations to your
No.
humankind.
No.
If I died tomorrow,
define racism.
which I
in the
could
context
do...
of the Stephen Lawrence report, define racism. When you
I'm
can,
not racist to anybody, I'm sorry.
When you can define what racism is, come back
She's
and tell me
not...
racist. I
Excuse
Mohammed,
me.
she's not...
So what are you?
Mohammed,
How come I'm racist?
Yes,
wait a minute,
you are,
freedom of choice.
because
Okay,
you're
Mohammed,
being
she's not...
racist.
Okay, he's got his freedom of choice, but
yourself.
she wants to forget about racism. Most people
not
want to forget
racist
about
to
history
you.
because we're nothing to do with the slave trade.
Yes,
You're
but-
nothing to do with
yes,
the slave
but you're
trade.
very- yes,
we're
but-
to do with the here and now, with a child, whether it's a black child or a white child dying on the
If
pavement.
I
Yes, but
died
the very
tomorrow, I would give
institutions-
you my
but
organs.
That's what you're thinking.
So
But
why
the
would you
very
give me yours?
institutions of this country, the army, the police force, the educating system, the whole sphere of British society is built on a race-first platform.
CJ, very quickly.
He's talking a lot of rubbish. And Mohammed, how can you justify not give... Say if there's a white baby waiting for your kidney or for a relative from your kidney, you telling me that you make that baby die?
It's not a matter of
No,
making...
just answer
No.
the question.
I'm answering the question.
Just answer the question. You are talking a lot of
No,
rubbish.
I'm not.
right?
No, we have different genes, right, than white people, right? There are dominant genes and there are recessive genes, right? This is why white people, right? No, hold on. Let me finish my point.
This is scientific mumbo jumbo.
No, it's not.
Frankly,
It's fact.
it is.
It's fact.
Very quickly, go on.
I think the danger is we're getting carried away with history. History can be very dangerous. Look at Northern Ireland, and you're making suppositions about black black history, the slave trade was brought by a lot of West African blacks as well. It wasn't just white.
What a complete load of rubbish.
Let's just,
Andy King, it's a very complicated issue. Is this not the
Rubbish.
problem with society today, that we are getting entrenched in things that happened hundreds of years ago? Yes, be aware of it, but let's not be obsessed by it.
Yes, but the legacy is still
Mohammed,
there.
Andy King.
Absolutely. I think in order to go forward, we must bury the injustices of the past and live in a society
No, wait a minute, I'll let you
in
know.
which people feel they're being dealt with fairly today, that people do have equal opportunities in the police, in the army, and other public institutions as well as...
And let's address, Andy, we're going to address injustices today in the here and now, and that's what we're going to talk about. Not something that happened 400 years ago, something that's happening now in just a minute. We've got to take a short break. When we get back, we'll be meeting this woman. We're talking about injustices in the present. She's got first-hand experience of those. Modern-day race relations. She and her family are the only Asians on a Birmingham housing estate where they've suffered 8 years of racial abuse and violence. Join us in a couple of minutes. This is the case, but you've got a little wig on tonight. Because you were born in this country, you class yourself completely British?
I think I'm British, by all rights, yeah.
Absolutely.
All my children, British passports, all born and bred here.
And what sort of harassment have you been getting on the council estate where you live?
Well, when we first moved in, we had parking boulders through the window, bricks, National Front stickers through my letterbox, fireworks through my letterbox. My daughter being told she's going to get beat up because she's a Buddha. And
How old is she?
Well, at the time she was 10, this was last year. I sent her out for the first time down to the shops. 2 girls threatened to beat her up, calling her Buddha, Paki and everything.
She's not even religious, are you?
I'm not religious. I'm not nothing, I'm just a normal person. I just want people to treat me for what I am. Look past the colour, look past what I am. Try and get to know my family for what we are instead of judging us.
Gerald Hartog, why is this happening in this day and age? 1999, there are still ignorant, bigoted people like this. Do we still have huge battles to win when it comes to race relations?
We have big battles to win. The first thing that I would say, however, is that race relations is almost like a scab on our society. People are obsessed with picking at it. There are millions of splendid interactions between people of different races.
Do you think it's a bit of an industry?
Oh, there is a bit of an
industry.
Yes, there is a bit of an industry. There's money to be made out of race relations. But to come back to this lady's point, I mean, it's outrageous what has happened to you. And I think this is a question of law and order. It's a question of coming down hard, very hard on the perpetrators. Those people don't represent ordinary people of any race or religion in this country. They are trash, and they've got to be stepped on.
Now, Joe Allen, you were actually agreeing with when Mr. Hart up there was suggesting that all these quangos and committees and commissions are being imposed on us, and we're being legislated till we're, blue in the face, never mind white in the face or black in the face, and there's just too much bureaucracy. You were agreeing with that point?
Yes, I was, and I am, because I've seen the industry. I was a chair of the Leicester City Council Equal Opportunities Committee, for example.
Yeah.
And I see the literature that we wrote about trying to equalise things, where we know some people are at the bottom of the pile and we want them to be part of mainstream society. But at the end of the day, that rhetoric, that paperwork, does not manifest itself in practice. And there is a race relation industry out there that many, many people, black and white, are benefiting from their pocket. But in terms of doing something to bring about real change, we don't see...
Well, you've got a guy from the government here, you've got an MP, New Labour, for rugby. What should his party be doing?
Well,
Tell
let's put
him.
it this way. As usual, we always wait till an incident happens before the action is taken. I can go back when the CRE was developed, 1976. He didn't have no teeth. He didn't do anything for the people. The Lawrence case comes along 20 years later, and now we're repeating it again. We must do this for the poor.
Andy King, answer that.
And so on. As far as I'm concerned, tell Mr. Blair and tell the rest of the government, until they put theory into practice, so that black people are part of the government departments for real. And I'm not talking about the guy...
Well, you're talking about positive discrimination, what the Americans call it. Well, let Andy King answer that. Let Andy answer that. It's only fair. No, let Andy answer that. It's only fair. Then I'll come to you in a second. Wait! Andy.
I understand...
Wait!
Black here, man.
Wait, in a minute.
I understand the points that are being made here, and they're being made very eloquently indeed, and it is something we must address. But we have brought through a Crime and Disorder Act. For the first time, racially motivated attacks against people will not be tolerated. Yes, sadly, it does take a major incident in order to bring about change. sadly, that is the nature of the process of change. We must never allow another Stephen Lawrence.
The words race relations were not even mentioned in the Labour manifesto. World Cup bid is in there, but race relations is not mentioned.
Right. Well, I'm not going to bandy the manifestos with you tonight, Nicky. You may be right.
You were doing that 2 years ago.
You may. No, well, there is a time and a place for that, and I don't think that that issue is the right one tonight. What I would also like to say is at the very heart of the Home Office is a very formidable black campaigner for equalities.
Hold my tongue.
No, you know.
Now, Ben.
The scenes with Jack Straw.
Let's
it comes from rugby.
Ben's going to have his say now. On you go.
You know, I mean, it depends who you're actually talking about as black people, because to me, I think it's about time we started to have to look at our own selves. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I believe that there's racism deep in black people, okay? And until we start... Look, no, let's cut the crap. Let's cut the crap, all right? All I'm trying to identify with is that every time there's a problem, black people keep running out and complaining that this is this, we're getting stamped on, this is not getting done. Believe it or not, we're not helping ourselves, because when you look at other cultures, Asian, Chinese, call it one you want to, they're being quite successful. They're enjoying the gravy train. But when you look at black culture, we have too many rich black people who have been successful and they don't look back. They do not help in our own community.
They desert their roots.
You understand what I'm saying?
Alan Ford,
until we start to answer...
Okay, Ben. No, we haven't got a lot of time, and I have to impose...
Until we start to answer
I have to say, yes, you've had to say...
And identify where we can make a point of a pyramid. We need to build up a network where black people can actually...
Ben, I applaud you. We're running out of time. We haven't got time, but you've made a good speech. But what do you think about what you've heard tonight?
I agree with him.
You agree with him?
Yeah, I do.
This man's agreeing with you?
Yeah,
I do.
What do you think about race relations? No, we haven't got time. Believe me, we have not got time.
We've got time.
Alan Ford, what about the future of race relations?
Agree.
We have not.
Agree.
What about the future of race relations?
The Race Relations Board, its only modus operandi is its own survival. To some degree, I agree with you.
Tete Coffey, want to hear from you now. What about the Race Relations Board and the survival of it? Ben, be quiet.
Nicky.
You know,
Tete, we've got a minute left.
I think the Commission for Racial Equality does an absolutely fantastic job.
Yeah, come on, man.
Somebody in this community has to
represent?
draw a line in the sand and decide what a decent society should do and what an indecent society does. That is what, for me, the CRE represents. And it is very important for us to be able to put these matters up and agree that as a civilized society, this is acceptable and this is unacceptable.
OK, let me come back to you, because I started with you at the beginning. You're going to go back tonight. What do you think we can practically do to stop this sort of thing happening to you and your family? Very quickly.
I think that people who do things like that are insecure with themselves. They don't know where they're coming from to start with. So they're like picking on other people, picking on
low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem. I don't think we can fight racism with racism. If I was to do the same thing,
fight it with common sense and intelligence.
Fight it with common sense and intelligence.
Thank you very much. Well said. Thank you all very much indeed.
Well, on that original question, Sylvia from